everyone. I am Tiffany Standard, founder and CEO of Stimulus Inc. So glad that you can join us for our next supply and demand event, The Real Cost of Doing Business. A series of events and community really focused on navigating supply chain issues, building better business relationships, and really understanding how to really be transparent with your customers, your partners, on what's happening within your business. So excited to welcome our next speaker in our series and really highlight amazing Black and Brown women and their voices in supply chain. I really started these events to highlight the conversation on subject matters basically we're never invited to speak on. So we've had amazing speakers throughout the series. So excited to welcome our next speaker. She is Denise Woodard, founder and CEO of Partake Cookies, a natural food company that was inspired by her daughter's experience with food allergies. Launched in 2017. Her first product included amazing cookies that I love, that are allergy-free, gluten-free, vegan, and can now be found in over 8,000 retailers, Target to Trader Joe's to Whole Foods. And they just celebrated their 6-year anniversary. So very excited to welcome her.
Hi, Tiffany. I'm so excited for our chat today. Thank you so much for having me.
Me too. And congrats again on your anniversary. How does that feel to celebrate 6 years?
It's weird. It's this like mix of it feels like we're just getting started, but also kind of given all the supply chain challenges and the world that we're living in, it also feels like I've been doing this forever. So it's a very weird juxtaposition of the two, but I'm super excited about what we're building and I think we're just getting started.
That's amazing. So I know in 2021, you released a line of baking mixes from Brownie mix to Blondie mix and Pizza Crust, which I haven't had the chance to try yet, but I look forward to it. And then I think this year, 2022, you released new products with like pancakes and waffles. So you're like going across the food areas, which is great because I know whether you have allergies or you're just trying to eat healthier and just eat better. And I just became vegan this year. So it's been like a few months of me trying to figure out what to eat, whether it's snacks or missing my pancakes to all of the things that you still want to continue to eat. But now it's vegan and allergy free and a little bit healthier than and what we're used to. So congrats on that. That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So let's jump into it. So our conversation is really focused on supply chain wins and losses and different issues as you just mentioned, over the last couple of years. So I know that you have an MBA in supply chain management, which is amazing because I know you have a corporate background working with CBG companies. How has that knowledge really helped you with your current business?
I think it helped me understand the importance of process. Between my MBA and my experience at Coca-Cola, understanding whether it's around food safety, in terms of securing long-term contracts, in terms of building the processes, whether it's stages and gates or commercialization, it helped me. But I will say it's interesting to understand when you need to institute those things in the businesses because we were, a team of one from when we launched in August of 2017 to January of 2020. So while I had some of that knowledge, I also wasn't utilizing it because there wasn't a huge place for process in the business. But as we've started to scale, it's been really helpful to be able to institute those things and kind of tweak them to fit the size of our business. Because it's like you want to be nimble and agile in a way that, I wasn't in my corporate career, but you also want to adhere to like basic supply chain principles and to processes. And so there's like this fine line that we're trying to figure out of like what's enough process and kind of corporate structure, but we don't want to slow the business down either.
No, that makes sense. That's a great point. So going from a team of one till just a couple of years ago to how big is your team now?
We're 20 people now.
Awesome. That's amazing. So now that you're expanded into different areas in food, from brownie mix to pizza crust, how can you talk about the supply chain journey in terms of how do you go about procuring and developing relationships with suppliers to build the inventory of the products that you're building, and how do you decide to go into the next item, food item, as a part of your kind of your journey?
Sure. So on the procurement front, we procure all of the ingredients ourselves, and then we work with a contract manufacturing partner. When we were a team of one, I was the person who's procuring the ingredients. And for the most part, we still work with the same suppliers that I was buying 50-pound bags from. We're buying, full truckloads from now. Thankfully, we've negotiated better terms, better pricing. But I'm really grateful to those folks for working with us in the beginning. And I think the reason we're able to still work with them is because I did a lot of work to vet them in the beginning, from understanding, what food safety audits they had in place, to what certifications they had, to, what facility, like what allergens they had in their facility, and like making sure that we as a brand, particularly one that's catering to an allergy sensitive consumer, had ingredients that we felt really good about. And then, I think people think about the ingredients, but there's also the procuring of the packaging materials, whether it's the boxes or a film for the snack packs or the master cartons. And so there's so many materials to keep track of, it's been an interesting ride there. And then you asked another part of the question, Tiffany, and I forgot what it was. It was, how do we
Um,
go about procuring ingredients,
like
but
procuring
also,
ingredients and developing those relationships with your suppliers. So you mentioned, it's so many vendors that go into one product, that goes into a bulk of products that go, on your website to the stores that you're in. So talk about that, right? Like you can have 20 different vendors just to make that one box, right? So talk about how do you kind of develop those initial relationships.
sure. So while I have my MBA in supply chain, my undergraduate major was interpersonal communications. I didn't know anything about procuring raw materials in terms of ingredients, but I think using just basic communication skills, it was a lot of just like showing up, telling the story, doing what we said we were going to do, working hard to like nurture those relationships and make it a two-way street. Send business to those vendors when I could, to speak highly of them. And they really showed up for us, particularly as like there started to be shortages on, whether it was sunflower oil or oats or whatever raw material it was, because we had dedicated the time and resources into building those relationships. Those suppliers really showed up for us when, the ingredients were really tight in the market. So I think a lot of it was taking the time and caring enough to build relationships with the suppliers. And then I think you asked a question earlier about, how do we think about the new products that we go into? So we launched with cookies initially. And as over time we've started to use, there's still some gut feel, but there's a lot more data that's involved in making the decisions. Now we're looking at, what the category is doing. And so what flavors are doing well, and what flavor profiles are doing well, which ones are declining, to determine what we're going to come out with. We initially launched with crunchy cookies only. We added soft baked cookies because we saw that we saw there was a large opportunity there. And then the baking mixes came to be. It was an interesting story because a company that we were buying our baking mix from personally at home got acquired, and they discontinued the baking mix, the only pancake waffle mix that my daughter could safely eat. And so I called our product developer and was like, hey, can you make me something that I could eat at home? And she made something that I ended up sharing with the team, and we all fell in love with, and we launched it into a product. But we were able to make it at the same contract manufacturer. It uses a lot of the same materials that we are already procuring for our cookies. And now, as our business is growing, we've moved to a more formal commercialization and stages and gates process where we're, getting input from every member, every functional group of the team, where ops is saying, yeah, where are we going to make that? How are we going to package it? How much is that going to cost? And marketing saying, yes, it appeals to our consumer for this reason or not because of this reason. And sales is saying, hey, I think this is what the revenue potential is. These are the channels that we should go after. And so it's a much more robust discussion. But in the early days, it was, my daughter needs a pancake mix. What are we going to do? But it's starting to change over time. But I think it's important as a small business to keep like some of that instinctual, like gut feeling, and not just use the data to make the decisions. But it is important also to look at the data.
Got it. We talked about earlier bringing back the lemon cookies, so I'm ready.
The lemon cookies are going to be a permanent part of the assortment, thanks to the data, which said that
Yes,
the lemon cookies were a winner.
yes. Love lemon. I feel like everybody does for most part. It's popular taste. So I'm excited about that. So when you're thinking of purchasing, and working with these different suppliers, are you working with local suppliers? Are you working with national suppliers? Are you working with global suppliers? Have you traveled to other countries and built out those relationships? And what was that experience?
Haven't traveled to other countries to build out the relationships, but some of our ingredients, like our cocoa, and sugar are coming from other parts of the world. All of our sweeteners and chocolates are fair trade. And so, when I think about the suppliers, the things that are important to us are from an allergy friendly perspective. Are they making this in a facility that's free of the top 8 allergens? Also, then it's like from a sustainability perspective, like what farming practices are they using? How are they treating their employees? And so those are some of the factors that go into it when we're making decisions. But we, for the most part, are working with national suppliers. I'm really interested. I think we have an opportunity to learn more about regenerative agriculture and how we can work with more like local farmers, because I think it's really important. But I will say, when we were an operations team of one, I was so focused on making sure that we were sticking to our allergy friendly piece of the business that I didn't I honed in on that and I didn't spend as much time thinking about the other pieces. But now that we have the bandwidth and we have the right team members in place, we're looking at it from multiple angles: sustainability, treatment of employees, employment practices, and then the allergy friendly aspect as well.
Got it. So you brought up two things I want to discuss. One thing earlier you mentioned about negotiating pricing, and I think nobody talks about that enough. I always compare it to like when women are negotiating, to buy a car, they always say bring a man with you and all of that, which is annoying. But is that the same type of experience when it comes to negotiating prices, whether it's local or national, manufacturers that you're working with? Do you see that they're offering different prices to you compared to a man? And what was your experience with that? And what would you recommend, our listeners to do in that aspect when they're trying to get good costs, especially over the last 2 years? Prices went crazy with shipping and all of that. And obviously it was due to, COVID and supply chain issues, but some people took advantage of that. Some people went double, triple the pricing that they should have went to. So can you speak to that?
Sure. So I will say I have not asked any of my male founder counterparts about their pricing, but I do have, a margin threshold that we're trying to hit. And when I look at our raw materials, I'm saying, I'm going and I'm shopping prices. And so while it's important to build a good relationship with our suppliers, I think it's also important that they're very fair. And so I'm doing market checks to understand if the pricing that we're getting is competitive for the size of our business. And then I'm going back and saying, like, we're in a different place than we were as a business, years ago. So I need that to be reflected in the pricing. And then we need to contract this for the next year so I can make sure I have enough sugar or flour or oil or whatever it may be to grow with my business. And I think people have been receptive. It's interesting though, because it is a very male dominated industry. And I can I can tell like people are looking at me like, oh, that's so cute. You're like my daughter, until I come with the, like, this is what the price needs to be. And if not, we're going to have to switch
Right.
suppliers. And then I think people, will start to take you more seriously.
Right, exactly. Don't you hate that you're like my daughter? What? Like who's
And sometimes though I can use it to our advantage because
sometimes
it's
you
like your
can, but
daughter's calling to try to get my oats. And so like, it's an interesting dynamic that
yeah.
women I think have to play. And it's like, take me seriously, but also like if you're like, yeah, it's anyhow, it's an interesting, weird game that we have to play.
Well, that goes into my next question. So taking advantage of supply diversity programs, right? So it's that weird game of, hey, supply diversity programs have been around forever. Not They have not always worked for companies and different corporations that have started them. Over the last 2 years, they've increased, with all of the racial equity initiatives that launched since 2020. Some have done well, some are still in the same place. And I know you've taken advantage of supply diversity programs, particularly at Target, where you were able to get into Target and now you're in other, major retailers. Can you talk about that experience and why should businesses take advantage of it, even though some people would say it does pigeonhole you in that supplier diversity realm? But hopefully the goal for that particular corporation is to get you out of a program and just make sure that you're just working directly with that retailer and growing as a great business, not just a minority owned business.
Sure. So I ended up meeting the supplier diversity team from Target in 2017 at Expo West, the big natural foods trade show, in the bathroom line when I had Ziploc bag samples. And I remember the next year they had a minority owned business fair that I had the opportunity to attend. They helped me get in front of the buyer. They helped me understand what it would take to do business with a retailer of Target size. And I feel like they did a phenomenal job prior to 2020, before it was like cool and a lot of other people showed up with supplier diversity programs. programs to really help set minority owned and diverse businesses up for success there. I think I've been a fan because a lot of the supplier diversity programs across many large retailers have tangible benefits, whether it's waived slotting fees, better payment terms, additional marketing support. And so, while it's unfortunate that those programs have to exist, they do have to exist because there's so much inequity. And so, to your point, like get me on the shelf and I will prove myself. And so like if those programs can have some sort of like tangible monetary impact that allow me to invest more in my business so I can sell more product, and also so that they can show success so that they can hopefully go open the door for more diverse brands, then like I don't have a problem like utilizing them. We've seen like huge tangible benefits. I would encourage any diverse owned brand that has the opportunity to really like look into the supplier diversity programming at retailers, because I think it can be helpful.
Got it. So when you went through from Walmart to Trader Joe's, did you take advantage of those same programs, or because you already went through Target and you was on the Target shelves, you were able just to go in, kind of regular channels as well?
Well, it's interesting because I think we went in through like the regular door, but then I always make a point to try to meet the supplier diversity team separately and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like we're doing business with this with your business, your company now, and like how can we better partner?" So, I think it's important to have multiple relationships across the organization. And to your point earlier, like, some organizations do supplier diversity better than others. Some showed up before 2020, some are a bit more performative in nature. And so we pick and choose where we lean in. But for partners who are really partners and want to see diverse owned businesses have success in their stores, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I saw the increase, but some that were really doing it well over the last, 10, 20 years, and they just got better with it and paid more attention over the last 2, 3 years. Those are the ones that I was also excited about, because we've done, work with from Google to Salesforce to Microsoft, and then working with these companies for at least almost 10 years now, having the opportunity to see how they work with diverse suppliers, women-owned businesses have been amazing. And they just started like, hey, now we're going to give you capital, non-dilutive capital, which is even better. And, different programs like that. So that's been really amazing to see. So some got to do some better work, but we'll talk about that later. So what are some unique challenges, supply chain challenges in the food industry that may not be in other industries? And like what draws you to work with, that particular, you know, supplier at the time that you're having these challenges? As you mentioned, different things are happening across the board, and a good supplier will let you know and be transparent. What type of challenges have you had so far, even maybe during COVID, maybe even before COVID, in growing your company?
I think some of the challenges we faced early on prior to COVID were around our needs as an allergy friendly brand. Like, I think there literally is only one supplier in the world that makes top eight allergen free chocolate in a top eight allergen free facility. And so, being able to uncover those suppliers and then getting them to sell to a small business like ours was definitely a challenge in the early days. I think the more recent challenges have been just like the global conditions, whether it's like sunflower oil in the Ukraine, the oat shortage. That's like literally, I think it's the worst oat crop in the history since they've been tracking like crops. And then everyone and their mom now makes an oat milk this and an oat ice cream this. And so now there's this like huge demand and there's little supply. And
Right.
so like, and we're seeing it across so many ingredients. It's a really challenging time to have a food business. And then when you can get the ingredients, anything that's not contracted, the price, you just see it like skyrocket. And then where you do have contracts in place, because of the challenges on logistics and freight, the product isn't showing up when you think it's going to show up. So it's just like a bad game of the little whack-a-mole game where you like shoot the like pound the little alligator. That's what it feels like. You like knock one thing down and then something else pops up. So it's definitely been a challenging environment, but I think it's only made our supply chain stronger. Like, we have probably 4 formulas for every cookie now. Okay, we have a problem with oats, then we need to use this one. We have a problem with buckwheat, then we need to use this one. And so like different packaging at the ready, different formulas at the ready. If there's a shortage on tapioca, we know that we can substitute this instead, like different like backup ingredients, secondary and tertiary suppliers on everything. And so like things when it was like la la land that we didn't have to think about, Now I feel like we're prepared, I think, knock on wood, for almost any scenario because it seems like everyone has gotten thrown at us recently.
That is really smart to have multiple different formulas for one like recipe. Wow. Is that like a normal thing in CBG, or is that something unique that Partake Foods is doing?
You know, I don't know. I didn't know it was
That
only
is
out of
like that's
necessity.
really smart.
We didn't have the idea until we saw like, oh, we might not be able to get the oats. What are we going to do? And then we heard like the next month, you might not be able to get the buckwheat. What are we going to do? And then I saw something recently, and it was a really large company. It was General Mills. And I think they said they had iterated on a formula for one of their big cereal brands 20 times this year already because of the formula, because of the shortages and all the supply chain challenges. So I think that it is a fairly common thing. And I think it's even more challenging for small businesses because it's already like you're constrained for resources, and now you have to spend your time doing these things that you didn't necessarily plan for. But without doing that, like, I don't know how you stay in business right now.
Got it. So my next question to that, changing the formula. I don't know, you paid attention to the news and things that's been happening with another small black-owned company, and her changing some formulas to her body washes and things of that nature, and just a terrible response to it. And we're going to talk about that in a deeper conversation because it was very unfortunate. I'm a big supporter of the honey pot and you love her products. So how transparent are you when you have to change an ingredient, whether supply chain issues or you didn't get the product on time or whatever it may be? Like, do you put that on your website? Do you let folks know? Like, how are you? Or free shipping may have changed because it's no longer free, or you have to upcharge for that. How do you work with like your team to explain that and update your customers on what's happening?
Sure. So to go back to the allergy sensitivity of our product, like every time we change an ingredient, we think it's really important to be really transparent because people can be allergic to anything. And God forbid, like we change something and someone's not aware. So, like on the display pages for our website, every single time we make a change, like we highlight it at the top of the display page, like this used to have this now has this. We made some changes to our birthday cake and chocolate chip cookies. I guess it must have been last year, and we sent a dedicated email about that to all of our followers. We'll address it on social media as we need to. So we try to be very forthcoming about any ingredient changes, particularly because we know we're dealing with a really sensitive consumer at times. But I do think that formulas have to change, whether it's because of cost, whether it's because of efficacy, whether it's because of supply chain challenges. And I think that oftentimes consumers may not understand the new ingredient. And sometimes it's like you're leveling up the ingredient, or sometimes this is a more effective ingredient. And so I think that it's really easy to stand back and criticize someone. It's really hard to run a business, and it's even harder to run a business right now. And I would venture to say it's even harder to run one as a woman and a woman of color. And I think it's really unfortunate when people are very quick to tear down other people. So I too am a big fan of the honey pot and of what B is doing. And I was just really, really sad to see how that played out.
Same. Exactly. It was a big discussion amongst other CEO friends of mine of like, it's so hard to run a business. And that's why part of the reason why we started these events, the real cost of doing business, supply and demand, understanding what it takes to create a product, what it creates to get these ingredients, especially if it's a CPG company, and getting it to the market. I don't care if you're doing software, trying to get it to your customers, or doing a physical product and trying to get to your customers. Things are going to change quite often. And sometimes they change so quickly, you don't have that time to update your customers, and then you do, and then it's like it's a crazy situation. So it was very unfortunate to see. And I think what I saw from their response was amazing, of bringing on a chemist and say, hey, we're going to walk you through all of your, the different products and the different ingredients, and just give you those updates. And I think that transparency is important across the board. And it was great to see that, and will always be a supporter of that company. But I definitely want to bring that up, because I asked that question in previous supply and demand sessions of like, changing your pricing, changing all that, like the increase in transparency, because you're changing stuff so often now because of lack of, happen. And people wanted to really talk about it and understand that.
I
So,
think that's a challenging one because, like, with the price increase, and it's interesting because I feel like people have different expectations of small businesses, and then oftentimes our own communities have different expectations from people. Like it's just like you wouldn't expect Oreos to send you an email every time they take a price increase. Yet, like this much smaller company that has much less money and much
Right.
less people, like you're coming for them in like in a really like not kind way. So it's interesting to see.
Speak on that. That's so true. You'll go in the store, you'll see the change in pricing, and then you're like, oh, okay, Oreos, I'll get it. You know what I mean? You don't email them, you don't say anything, you don't boycott them on Twitter. You just
Mm-hmm.
buy your Oreos. So no, you're correct. So we definitely have to talk about that. Like small businesses, we don't have the bandwidth. We don't, and it's not like we're not thinking. You're always thinking of your customer. I don't care what you do. You're always thinking of your customers, but you don't have PR team or certain
Right.
things like that to say, hey, I'm gonna send out this press release every time I change up one thing. So yeah, that's important. So what is next over the next 6 years? Let's say you just celebrated six. I'm just say six. I know you're gonna be around for like 30, 40 years, but we're just gonna speak about the next six years. What is next for Partake Foods?
More products. So you'll see our first product outside, first snack product outside of cookies early next year. So we're hard at work on that. But I hope that you'll see us across multiple aisles of the grocery store over time. So definitely more products, more stores and more locations, hopefully carrying Partake. We just went into Walmart earlier this year, and we have some new exciting distribution coming later this year. So we've gone, from we're 350 stores at the start of 2020, and now we'll probably be about 10,000 at the end of this year, and hopefully that will continue to grow. And then the impact that our business has, that's really important to me. The particular causes that are most important to me are increasing diversity in the food space. We launched a fellowship program alongside several HBCUs in 2020. We'll run our third cohort of that program this year. And then we've committed to working to eradicate childhood food insecurity. This year, we've committed to 1 million meals to No Kid Hungry. And so hopefully as our business grows, the good that we're able to do in the world will also grow.
Awesome. That's amazing. I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
see more from you and definitely try more of your cookies. I will send you email once I see the limit back out.
Please do.
I'm excited to have them again. We are speaking with Denise Wooder. She is the founder and CEO of Partake Foods. And I am Tiffany Standard, founder and CEO of Stimulus Inc., and the host and organizer of Supply and Demand, the real cost of doing business. And we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Take care.
Thank you.